Hey there, everybody. David R. Becker here. And it's a Saturday morning, and I'm normally at the studio with my class, but since it's New Year's Eve, we decided to cancel the class. But I feel like I need to do a painting. And so we're going to try this painting for myself. But I figure while I'm doing it, might as well film it too. And so what we're doing is a city scene, a street scene. I think this is a street scene from a city, Nice. Nice. And so I'm just going to see it, just going to drop here a little bit more. And it's a kind of complicated one for the last one of the year with a lot of people and a lot of buildings. But I decided to do this because this is what I really enjoy doing. I love doing street scenes. I love a lot of people in there. Love city scenes in general. And so I'm just going to show you how I simplify things. And I'm doing it for myself because normally on Saturday mornings I teach, and this Saturday morning I just felt like, I still gotta do my demonstration. So here we go. And cheers, everybody. This is a coffee, my morning cup of coffee. For any of those of you that know me, I do a Thursday night paint along every Thursday night at 6:30 Central Standard Time. This is not one of them. This is just me doing a painting, a demonstration, because I have nothing better to do because I'm not in class this morning. So let's see. Let me get my paper towel real quickly here. So I'm going to start from the background, work myself forward, and by doing that, I do my lights first, and always that's the first thing I do. But before I talk about that, let me tell you about the drawing. So the drawing is something that we're going to be discussing really shortly in, well, let me make sure I've got my volume down. So we start out with the drawing, and the drawing, we're going to be studying that in the beginning of the year, this year. For my students, we're going to start from the scratch, and so I'm going to show you different ways of applying this drawing from a photograph to the paper. There's many different ways you can do that. And hold on, let me just 1 second. Put my gloves on. And so there's many different ways of doing that when it comes to machines or freehand, or how many different ways you want to try it. I'm going to show you all the different ways in this coming newsletter I've got coming up on Tuesday. And if you want to sign up for that newsletter, you can do that on my website at BeckerArt.net. But that's going to be a little thing I'm going to put together this week. So let's start in the background here. I'm just going to kind of take it warm background. I'm going to make a warm background, and then the shadow in front I'm going to make cool. And so I'm just going to go right in here and give the building some color. And it looks like they've got some nice warm yellows back there. And so we'll just put some of that in there. And which is normally, odd that you're going to make the background, and usually the background you keep cool, right? Because you want it to push back. But in this instance, we're going to just go right through and just make it warm, because the background and everything else will disguise the light color back there. And by doing that, we're going to go and make that warm, but then the foreground be cool, and then the people in front of that will show dimension. So, and we got perspective, and we got all kinds of things to show perspective and show dimension that we don't really need to worry about the color affecting that. Let's get a little bit clean spot here. I will put some of the, there are some blues back there. And I'm going to start out first, and again, I'm going to be doing this in watercolor and gouache. So this is my gouache. This is watercolor gouache, and this around here is my regular transparent watercolor. And so we're doing both. And so, but I started out like a watercolor. I basically am doing a watercolor right now. And so as I get closer to the end, then I'm going to start using the thick stuff. I'm going to start using the gouache. And it's not the acrylic gouache. I also have acrylic gouache. I have acrylic gouache in here, but I'm not going to use that for this. I'm just going to use the watercolor and traditional gouache. And if nobody's watching, that's fine, because I always put this afterwards. I put this on YouTube, and then you can watch it later. So I'm going to put this all nice and warm colors. I will keep some white. Some of this is going to stay white back there. So again, this is my light colors. You always start out with your light colors. After you get your drawing, your drawing, and now I'm going to put a blue sky in there because I want to keep it. I want to keep it warm, and I want to keep it away from having too much blues back there. I want to make it orangey, yellow, and then up here it's going to be blue. And so even though you may see something like that in the distance, it doesn't mean you have to put it in there. You have to be the artist, and you have to decide what kind of color scheme you're going to have, how you're going to keep things back and forward, and stuff like that. So, and those are things you're all going to learn if you follow me. This coming up week, we're going to start you from the scratch. We're going to start you from the beginning of painting watercolors. And every once in a while we do, we'll put in gouache into that, and I'll show you other kinds of things that you can do possibly with watercolor, and that'll be in the new year. And so again, this is my lights, and so I'm just kind of going through here, getting my background done, working my way forward, getting the big parts done. A little lavender in there to gray it down a little bit. And this is going to be, actually that is going to be bluish. And so, let's see. I kind of always, you can also use your gouache as watercolor. You can, manipulate it so that it's not so thick and just water it down. And so now I'm going to go into my foreground, and I'm getting the light colors of my foreground. The lightest colors of the dark, which is the mediums. I'm kind of getting those right now too. Just going in there so that I don't have to put them in later. So like this person right here has a shirt on that's going to be in shadow, and that person's going to be dark, but there are some lights in through here. And take some ultramarine blue. Hey guys. Oh, there is somebody watching. Thanks for watching. This normally would be my Saturday morning class in McHenry, but we canceled it today because everybody's doing things. I know a lot of people are doing things to get ready for the new year. Probably a big party tonight. And so I just decided I want to paint. And so I always like to show you guys what I'm painting. This is more for myself. It's not so much a lesson, but why not make it a lesson too at the same time? So here I'm going to make my metal tones because that's my lights. I got my lights in the background kind of done, so I don't really have to worry about them. And maybe a little bit brighter here. And I want to show you how to do a complicated scene. This scene is very complicated. If you look right up here, look at how many people are in there, tables and all kinds of things down the middle of the street. And people tend to do piece by piece, right? And so I want to show you how to do more of the whole thing as a painting, and not so much as piece by piece. And yes, they'll do piece by piece as we go on, but first we got to create our color scheme, and then we create our lights, get our lights in there, and then we'll go into our medium darks, our second step. So it doesn't matter how much detail is in your work, you still follow my 3-step process. It's still going to work the same way as when I do my 3-step process during the week on Thursdays. And so I'm just going in here, and this may take a little bit longer than my normal ones because again, it's a little bit for myself. I'm just gonna work it out. And so here's my cool colors. I'm getting in there with my cool lights in the foreground. And the reason I kind of use the gouache nowadays is because it's kind of fun to use it on top of this, and then when you're covering things up. And I find, it is watercolor too. It just happens to be opaque watercolor. So if you really want to cover something up and cover something up really well so you don't see the paper, gouache is the thing to use. And again, this is my lights. These are mediums now. Mediums and lights of the dark part. We can put a little bit of the orange in here too, like it goes from, and these people, if you look at the people, maybe they have an outline that's light, but they're pretty much dark against the light. And these tables are going to be negative painted because they're lighter than the ground. So I'll be doing the ground later. And so I'm, again, just getting in the light colors of the medium. And then here you can see the background, nice and bright. A nice bright color in there. And I think on this side too, we'll get this again. We'll make this a little bit brighter. Let's make this awning blue. A little bit bit darker. Again, I'm not going for my darks yet, my large darks. I'm still at my light stage of the darks. These are going to be my darks later on, but I'm getting the light parts of them and getting the color scheme that I want. And it's basically going to be orangey, blue, and yellow, purple. Is basically what that's going to be. You can use both of them together. It doesn't have to be like just purple and yellow or just blue and orange. You can mix a little bit of that together. And this simplifies things too, because I'm basically going in here now and simplifying the large pattern. And what's the second most important thing about your painting besides the drawing is number one, your value pattern. And so if you look at the value pattern, the whole background is light, and then we have these darks on top of that. All the people, all the stuff that's happening out here, and the shading in the front here is all going to be your darks. And it looks really messy right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of things happening in there, and you're going through and grabbing a bunch of stuff. But that's what I want. I want it to be together as one. You know, the painting is one. It's not a separate thing. So I'm going to go in here now and just kind of go in and try to get these tables a little bit. Get my darker pattern of shadowing. So back here it can be a little bit warmer. I can throw a little bit of orange into this blue, like where the shadow starts. I can make that a little bit warmer. And on the other side of that is going to be nice and bright and light. And that guy's pants, I think, are dark, so we can just go right over that. The tables now are consisting of what the first wash was that I just put down, see? And some of this is even still wet, but because I'm using enough pigment, it'll be fine. And getting a soft edge where you don't want your eye to be anyways is a good thing anyways. So now this guy's shirt is a little bit lighter than the background, so I'll let that dry and I'll go in there and I'll get a detail at the last stage, which is what you do in the last stage, is you get your detailed darks. This is still my large areas of darks and mediums. That's the second step, and no matter what you do, doesn't matter what the subject matter is, the stages and the steps are the same. You got to start realizing that it's just because you do a different type of picture doesn't mean that it changes the way you paint. It's you know, the style that you use, the style that you're used to and accustomed to, that's what you kind of are building up on. You're constantly building up that idea of how to paint. You know, and how to paint is you do it so it's like natural. You don't even think about it. You want to get to that point where you're not thinking about what you're painting, you're just painting. And then I think about things like color and stuff like that. But right now I'm just thinking, you know, how to get my big lights and darks to look really nice. And beautiful brush strokes. Here's a couple of lines in there, and this is going to be out of focus, so I'm just going to keep this nice and wet, soft edged. Here there's the banner or the awning coming over this side, so that's dry up here already. So look at that, I can just put it right in there. And try to make everything 20% darker than you feel it should be, because it will dry 20% lighter. So always make it wrong, make it look wrong, make it look like it's too dark. It's better to make it look too dark than not having it dark enough and then trying to get back in there later and trying to make it dark enough, and then you won't get that beautiful wet wash, that wet looking wash. And look at how all of a sudden it's starting to look like that's an awning, and this is all starting to become into shadow, right? Use my smaller brush. If you have a question, go ahead and ask. I'll look up every once in a while to see if you have a question. Again, I'm doing it for myself, but, you know, hey, if you can learn something from me, you know, while I'm doing it, that's great. So just ask away. I don't mind at all. And tell your friends to start watching on Thursday nights, because we're going to start from this get-go. We're going to start with one color. Well, actually, this week we're going to be doing a sunset scene with light background, and almost kind of like this, where the background's going to be all light and colorful, and the foreground's going to be really dark. Super dark, because I want you to learn how to use enough paint. Most of you don't use enough paint as beginners. You don't use enough paint ever. So I'm going to just get you to start using more paint on your subject matter, and Now this is wet, but you can see I'm going to get some watermarks, but that's okay. What's that sign? Or that's just... Again, this is my big mediums and my big darks yet. I'm still working on that. I'm not getting down to my detail stage yet, stage 3. And we will be talking about drawing. I mean, this what's important in this scene is the drawing. I mean, it's important to get the drawing to look like people, but it's not that important that I've got to go in there and make them photographic. I don't have to go in, and that all depends on your style too. How photographic do you get? How detailed do you get? That's a lot up to the person and how they paint. If you're going to do like hyper-realism, then that's fine, and you have to do a little bit slower than I'm doing it, and a little bit more, your drawing is going to have to be right on. I mean, you're going to have to make it perfect, your drawing, when it comes to photorealism. Hyper-realism, I like to call it. And it's really kind of popular right nowadays, so, you know, if you feel that's the way you want to go, definitely go that way, but just, and actually you're going to have to find yourself a teacher, too, that is good at that. I'm working more for the big, and I can make a lot of my students are that way, where they paint really detailed, but you still want to paint your big areas first, and still follow the 3-step guide, you know, where you're doing all your lights first and your color. You can still do that, even if you're hyper-realist, I think, because you still need the value pattern. I mean, you can't get away from the value pattern. That is the number 2 thing that you need to get. Your drawing has to be number 1. The most important thing is your drawing. And then number 2 and 3 and 4 and all that, it starts from there. And it goes from, it's actually 3 steps, I find. It's like 3 steps that you got to follow. First one being drawing, second one being design. And after that comes the small stuff, the details. So now I'm working the background details. I'm just trying to get those kind of accomplished. Get those done, and it also depends on how detailed I get on those. If I get really detailed on those back there, then I got to get even more detailed in the foreground ones. So just give yourself, you know, whatever the way you do it, just remember that. If you're going to do a lot more detail back here, then you're going to have to do twice as much in the foreground so that it builds up and looks like a foreground. And so while I'm doing this background, the foreground's drying, so by the time I get there, we'll be good to go again. And so basically I'm going to get this done back here. I'm not going to go back in there later and try to get different things in there. No, I'm going to go, I do the area, get it done, and move on. I try not to jump back and forth from like one area to another area. Now I'm working on the background coming forward, get that done. Don't need to go back into there later on. You just, because the background, it will give my idea of how much detail I got to put in my foreground. And so, do whatever you have to do back there, get it done, get the feeling of how far you want to take it, and then don't go back. Watercolor is more one of those mediums that you want to kind of get in and get out, and not linger on in one area. Again, if you do have like a hyper-realist kind of style, and you have to get this really detailed, that's fine, you know, but you still want to do it in this pattern where you're going to background first, and get those lights and get the composition of light and dark established so that you know what it is, and just work your way forward and getting more and more detailed in there. Doesn't matter what your style is. Detail is detail, design is design, and the way you do it doesn't really affect that. You know, that's your way of designing something, and your style, your technique. The style and the composition and design of it should still be the same no matter how you paint. That may not make sense at first. It didn't when I got out of school, because I would just copy whatever I thought Shapiro was doing. But as you move on and you get better and better, you start realizing what it is that, you know, the style, you know, is there. It just builds because you're just taking a lot of classes and you're doing a lot of painting. That will just come to you. You don't have to worry about that getting, that's just basically something that's going to happen. You don't have to try to get a style. That just happens by how much you paint. So just paint a lot. And also who you take as a teacher, you know, because some of us teachers, like if you're taking a hyper-realist painter, then you're going to definitely probably do a lot more of that kind of style. And that's okay. I'm rambling here because I'm just trying to do this. I'm kind of working back, but I'm working this whole side. And so I'm just kind of going in here, working the side. And underneath the awnings, I was told always by Shapiro that you can make this nice warm underneath the awning. It just kind of gives life because from the street it reflects down up into the awnings and in eaves of things. He had always told me to put orange in there, like a warm color in there. And it works. It works really well, actually. So these people are going to be dark in front of this, so I can go right through them. And if I need to put like a light edge on them, a white edge, that's where my gouache will come in. I'll come in with my gouache later on and give it some of those lights again, because that's one thing you may lose a little bit. But I figure, you know, I couldn't enter this into TWSA if I'm going to be using gouache, because that's opaque watercolor and they don't allow opaques, but and whites, and so, you know, I wouldn't enter this one. But I love actually the look of the thick, because I also like acrylics and oils, and so it kind of gives me a feel like it's an oil, like you get those beautiful thickness of the paint, which oil gets. And you can do that in watercolor by adding gouache. You can make the look of like a oil. If you look at James Gurney's stuff, I mean, I think his name is James Gurney, a great he also does mostly gouache, but he also mixes watercolor. He starts like watercolor, and some people just use gouache and all of it being gouache, but they use it in a watercolor style. It doesn't matter how you do it. You can do it in both ways. It doesn't matter, because gouache is watercolor, but it just happens to be opaque. You know, it's an opaque watercolor, so it covers up really well. So if you want to cover up the white of your paper with a black or something, or something really dark, use gouache, because it's made for that. It's made to be used thick and cover up, where transparent watercolor is not made for that. It's made to be transparent. So you just got to realize what things are made for and what they do. A little bit of contrast right here in the center area here. So we're going to kind of come in here. Give me some warmth in here. Now, as you see, this is like, look at how medium that is now. That's a medium wash. There's no darks in there. There's no, I mean, though it looked really dark, right, when I first put it in, and now it's looking darker. But now I'm going to put the darks in. Now I'm going to put in the really dark darks, and this is the stage, because I've got all my mediums, got all my large mediums, and now I got my large darks, dark darks, and it kind of combines with the details. And so you can also combine these three steps. You don't have to be like, okay, it's gotta be this step is number 2 and you can't do anything else. No, you can combine the 2 steps together. Sometimes I combine 1 and 2 together when I'm doing the color lights. I may put a little bit of dark in there right away, and mediums on the large areas. So let me put some shadows going across here. Put some color in there, so when I put the darks in there, they'll just be behind. Let's put some color in here, even we can put some blues and such. And if you don't know what something is, I love the fake things in the paintings. I love the fake, especially in a scene like this where you can't get everything in there, not in the time I'm going to be doing this, but enough so that I can make it look like you're interpreting what the street looks like and all the things that are in the street. You don't always have to get every single thing in there in like a photograph. You can still make it look and understand what it is that is happening in the picture. Alright, I think this is dry enough to get my dark darks. So, dark darks. Let me go, I should be doing the background working forward, but because that's wet, I just got there, and because we gotta get this done, let's see where to spot where. Let's work our details, and I'll work my background details a little bit, and I'm gonna get a little bit darker. I'm using dark blues, dark purples, and I mix a little bit of warmth into them. And let's just go here where I see where it's dry yet. So this guy is going to be a little bit silhouetted, you know, which is fine. And as you're painting him, and if he's wet, you can always drop color into it also while it's wet. You don't have to start with the exact color. you're just kind of like wetting it, and you don't even start with the right value. Just kind of wet it with a certain any color, and then plop other colors into that. A little bit thicker. I use it a little covered up here. I'm going to use a little bit darker right here. And then there's a person right behind him walking. Make her face a little bit warm. And depending on what she's wearing, you can make it light or dark, but she's still even if she's wearing white, you would still make it darker than the background because it's silhouetted against the foreground here. And I'm following my drawing. I mean, drawing is important. You need to have the drawing so that you know what you're. And if you don't, like I didn't draw her legs, but I can draw with my brush. You know, I can just draw and just make it up because I know what it is. I've done enough, and I can make it not so perfect. You know, it is farther back, so. And this guy looks like he has a blue shirt on, so let's just go in there with some blue shirt. A little bit darker again, because see, this is my dark details now. And I'm working my center of interest, which is this area right here, right in the middle, and a little bit to the side here is going to be my center of interest. And so there I want a nice contrast. Here there's a little bit of a tent board, one of those boards that probably has what they have special on today. Little, what do they call those boards? Tent boards? Menu boards? Menu boards, there you go. In advertising enough, I should know that. So let's go with a little bit opaque. So I'm reaching into some of my opaque colors, my gouache, because I want it to be thick, and I want to cover up what's below it. A bit of water, and I know a lot of people are against the thickness of using opaques in their watercolor, their transparent watercolor. But then that's why I'm doing this. Is I want to show you that you can do it. You don't have to always follow the rules. You can try other things besides what the traditional part is and make it your own. Maybe you're going to love using gouache with your watercolor. You know, that's it. Just you never know. You never know. I like doing it because I like the look. And I've seen a couple artists who do that just gouache. And I like those too. And so I just decided that, hey, I want to try both together. And I tend to like it a lot. And I think also because I've been using a lot of like black paper, and I've been using opaques anyways in that because I have to use white with my colors and with black paper, that it's kind of got me excited about how thick I'm using the paints. Here, see, it's a little bit darker. Again, you can put any color down first, and then once it's wet, then you can apply other colors in there. And you know me, I always teach you to work wet into wet, and then you can apply more pigment to stop it from running so far. What brand brushes am I using? I am using my brushes. They're Holbein Gold brushes. I sell them on my website. Thanks for asking, Sylvia. They're my brushes. They're BeckerArt brushes. They're actually Holbein Gold brushes with my name on it. I don't have every size. I only have 6 sizes that I use. I only use six brushes here. And like I said, you can get them on my website. I've been trying to carry the whole set, but they're not going to have my name on it, but there still are Holbein Golds. I'm thinking about getting the whole set, but I've got to invest in that so before I can sell all of them. Because they make every brush you can possibly think of. Everywhere from that dragon tongue brush to, they're really nice brushes too, and they're very inexpensive compared to what the quality. They're really a good brush. They come to a super fine point. Now this got a little bit dark back there. I don't want to make it that dark, and so I just wiped it out with a paper towel. Just dabbed it a little bit. I want to get some stuff happening back here. And I look at the picture too, and this person is actually really dark right here. And this guy's standing here too. He's really super dark. He's got a lot of shadow. He's definitely in the shadow, and he's against the light, and so he's going to be a little bit darker right here. And same thing with this guy. And what's he doing? I'm going to look real close. He's got his arm on his side here. And his back, he's carrying something right back there. I'll make that a different color. So yes, I am working a little bit more details, but I'm at that stage now, and I'm working from back to front, and I'm going to get darker and darker and darker and more vibrant with my colors as they come forward. Because this is my center of interest, so I gotta keep this pretty steady, keep that looking good. And then this guy is pretty dark right here. And see how I'm blending things together as one. Also, I try to not make everything like separate. I try to bring in the washes so that they mingle amongst themselves, so that it all comes together as one wash. Because one bigger washes look better than just a bunch of little washes. You can make that floating your pigment, you know, as part of your, where you make it look like it's all floating together. And it also makes it look like some parts are out of focus. You know, when you don't show everything, you show things out of focus, and that's a good thing. We tend to not do that enough, is take things out of focus. We want everything in focus, like it's high definition, but I like it to where you don't see everything. Look at Mary White's stuff. I mean, she's my favorite of all the contemporary artists in watercolor. That lady can paint like nobody's business. Oh my gosh, I just love her work. So if you look at her work and look at how a lot of it is out of focus. Like there's all this detail, but then you'll get like this whole side that'll be out of focus. And all it is wet into wet, where it's lost your edges. Or bring edges together. Like see how I just brought this guy from the background into this person in the foreground, and just make it all one big wash bleeding into each other. And so the soft edges just feel like they're, you know, lost edges. And that is a good thing. I totally love doing that. Anything a little bit darker there. Okay, sitting back there. Like I said, this one will be taking a little bit longer than my normally, like my class right now, it'd be at the end of the class at 11. Class ends at 11:30, so about 11 o'clock or 11:15, I do like a 15-minute demonstration, which this one will be a little bit longer than 15 minutes, which already has been more than 15 minutes. But I'm not looking at the time. I just want to show you guys, and if you watch all the way through, that's fine. If you don't, you can catch it later, or if you just want to see parts, that's fine. Kind of just doing this on my own, just I wanted to paint this morning, and I love painting city scenes. And I just happen to have this picture I wanted to be doing quite a while ago, and so just thought I'd take this in really quickly. And now, even inside the shadows, there's shadows. There's shadows inside shadows that happen, you know, because there's one part that's covering up maybe the ground underneath them, and so there's a shadow inside shadows. You don't have to worry about that. I think people think that it always has to be one shadow, and when you're doing the big shadows, no. There's going to be a bunch of shadows in here, and all different colors. Some are warm shadows, some are cool shadows. And reflections, you can do reflections. Let's say this is wet or something. You can even make it look like it's wet. Like the street got wet there somehow. And that's just, that's up to you. You can decide that to do that if you want. You don't have to. As long as I follow my value study, you know, I gotta follow the values, and as long as I follow that, what you do for the texture and for the look of things is up to you. You know, it doesn't have to be like the photograph. As long as you get the big background being light, foreground being dark, you can go ahead and do whatever you like. That's number 2 most important thing. Remember, I keep on saying, the number 2 most important thing is that you got your values correct. And then the second is your design. Is your value pattern design done correctly? And if it is, and if you follow it all the way through, you'll have no problems. It'll be fine. So see, I made it a little bit darker now, so it's coming farther forward. Oh, I still have to do the background. Hold on, let me just get a couple of these background people done. Otherwise, you know, I forget about them. So let's just go back here and get a couple more of these darks. People in the background, don't forget, just do them all. Because I don't want to go back in there later on. I just want to get that done so that is through and finished. I don't have to go back into that area. This guy's head. And again, how detailed do you want it? Do you want it really detailed, or do you want it just Now this guy leaning over here has a light shirt, and he's kind of more dark around him. So I'm gonna make his light shirt, because I didn't make his light shirt well enough. So this is gonna be his light shirt, and I'll make darks around him. And right now it is dark. See, it looks dark, but it's going to be lighter because I will put darks around that later on. Here's a table, maybe get some stuff on it. Here's this guy's shirt in front. This hat is darker than this shirt behind, so I've got to think about that. His face will make dark, well, I'm going to make it lighter, so I'll put a little pinkish color into his face. Same thing with the side of this guy's face. There's going to be a little pink there. And these are my lights. That's still my lights. I'll put dark around that later on. Light to dark. Everything is light to dark. Now we can go back to my big wall and my big... And you notice I'm using more opaque colors here. I'm using the gouache. Why? Because I want it to cover up. I'm still going to use it pretty wet, but I want it to cover up what's about on top of it. And that's what gouache is made for. It's made to be used thick and not show that you can see through. But if you're using it wet like I'm using it, then it's still going to give a little bit of the effect of watercolor, like transparency. It's going to give a little bit of that. And, you know, some of it is going to be opaque. It's just opaque. That's what it is. It's opaque watercolor. So, and I actually don't mind that. I find it to be very attractive in a painting. Because again, I'm using it like I would be using oil paints. I'm using it so thick that I'm using the body of the paint to go on top of the water. And it gives it that really kind of interesting look of thickness of the paint, which most watercolors you don't want. I mean, you don't want that in transparent watercolor. But if you're using gouache and you'd like to use that style of making it thick and getting some thickness into your gouache, then go ahead, try it. I have, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Just remember, don't submit it to a transparent watercolor society. It's not going to work. You're going to get thrown out. So you don't want to do that. Know your things that you're getting yourself into. Read the directions, the perspectives when you're entering a show. So let's see how it's little by little, it's getting together, and now we're getting darker and darker and darker. And as I come forward, it gets darker. Now, I already have the lighting. So look at the lighting in the background, how it's just pushing everything in the foreground and the shadow. And so we're getting it. We're getting it nice, looking nice. And again, I'm not sure how long it's been taking me, but get everybody from South Carolina to Kenosha. Hey, Agnes. Patty. My palette of colors, I don't have the palette of colors listed for my gouache. I do have here's a list of my colors. I'm just going to put up here really quickly. Here's my supplies. Those are the colors that I had, that I used, my Holbein colors. And those are for my transparent watercolors, not for my gouache. I don't have that yet. I don't have, these are 24 colors in here, and so I don't have all of them yet. I always say to the students, use the colors that you love, use the colors that you like. I mean, it's a very personal thing when it comes to colors, and then make sure that you follow the values. That's more important when it comes down to the colors that you use. Make sure you get the values right first. But use the colors that you like and love. I like purple, I like blues, I love orange. I love orange. Orange and purple are my two favorite colors, and so you're going to see a lot of that in my paintings, like right here. See, I'm just going to put that right on. And that was pretty thick right there. I put that on there very thick. And that's what's fun thing about this now, when I'm going in here now with the thick stuff. If I put something that I made too light or didn't do right at the first time, I can go right over it with a super light. Like if I didn't leave the white there, that's fine. I'm just going to put it in later, thickly. But that, again, that is not traditional watercolor. That is not the way you do transparent watercolor. You know, that's not, you know, if you want to do transparent watercolor, you cannot put in these thick colors. So I just want to mention that because it's a different thing. But I just like doing it lately because, like I said before, because I've been using black paper and you have to use white on that, and I use black. When I was going to school, Irvin Shapiro never let us use white or black. And so I tend to teach with it now, but that's just me. And I tell you why, too. And I think that they never told us why in school, why we shouldn't use white or why we shouldn't use black. And I figured it out as I started teaching why. And that's because you don't want them to use white just because you want them to, you know, fix an area or use that and not use the paper as your white. And so, yes, I can see why doing that is a good thing, but explain to the students, and I like to explain to the students why you shouldn't be using white or black. In black, they want you to mix your blacks so that you learn how to use the dark colors to mix your black so that your black has color to it. And I figured out that I just make my colors, my black, I start with black and I put color into my black. And so it's kind of the same thing, just done a little bit differently. So like this guy's hat in the foreground is a dark blue, so I'm just going to go in here with a dark, do the rim a little bit. It does have like this little belt around it or whatever they call that on it, and so put that really nice and dark. Thanks, Renee. My approach is always the same. So if you listen to my one time, you'll never forget that I always say the same thing. There's a 3-step approach on doing every painting that I do, and I teach my students to do the same approach, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your design is or what your style is. I think most of it can be done the same because I go for the fundamentals. Fundamentals have to be done first. I mean, you have to have the fundamentals work. And let's see, this guy I said around him is going to be dark, right? So watch now, that dark I put in there, now watch how it becomes very, very light, because around this, I'm going to put the darks around his shirt. And there's another person sitting way back here, so I'll make that dark too. At the same time, this front of his face will be done. Go down here. So I did 3 things at once right there. I did this side of this shirt. I negative painted this guy's shirt, which I said it was going to be lighter later. I did the guy in the back and at the same time this person's face in the front here. So again, you cannot think pieces. You can think pieces like that, but it has to be all to the lights and darks of what's in the area. That's more important than the actual color you use, is the value. Like if I made a really bright red there, that was light, then that would be wrong because I wanted to make it dark. I could put a red there, but it would have to be dark. You can put any color you want there as long as you put the right values. Always the right values. So if you make a mistake, as long as you got the right values, if you flub the color or you don't get all the right colors everywhere, you know, if you get the right values, you'll do fine. Little shadow back here. Blend it all together. Let's see, I'm getting a little bit dark. And this guy's got a blue shirt on, and I'll just make it a little bit, do a shadow on here. Blend into the background a little bit. Side of his shirt, and then you can have his warm arm, his hair, this guy's arm. Now this guy, let's make his pants dark so that I can negative paint this guy's hat and the table. Maybe we just, I know I kind of flubbed this up the drawing here because this guy's arm now is gone and I put this guy's leg in front, so we'll just kind of blend that all together. Let's give his arm in here. Maybe we can cover his arm like this and then put a glass there. Another thing, nice thing about this paper is I can rub out. This paper is very, you can, it doesn't absorb as much as like an Arches does. It's Stonehenge Aqua. And I love the fact that I can rub out a little bit easier because it doesn't absorb into the paper as like an Arches does. Arches is very, you know, very porous, and it pours into the paper, your water will go into the paper, soak into the paper, and establish your pigment into the paper. But this floats a little bit into the paper, but most of it gets on the top. Let's put a little bit of drink in there, into his glass. Then there's something on the table here. Also here, there's something on the table. Get the edge of the table dark, the leg. Maybe there's a stool over here too, because there's stools sitting out here. The legs. See how darks create shapes. The very last thing you do is your darks, and they create shapes. Now here's a window, and so it'll reflect what's out here. So this guy's hat is supposed to be nice and dark, right? So we're going to do some opaques in this, so that I just put it right in front. This is going to be opaque, and so it's thick. And then at the same time, I'm going to reflect it into the window. It's reversed. And there's a shadow here. And so this guy's head would be in here too. It's just a reflection. It's in the water. And you don't have to make it perfect. You just know that it's reflecting. It's like glass. It's like if the street was wet, it would be like a mirror and reflecting what's above it because it's wet. And then you see like maybe there's lines in the street, like little lines from the cement, or it could be brick, and you can put the pavers down. I'm just putting a little bit of lines in there because a lot of times it just gives a direction too. There's a little direction of your eye from here going back into that area. Let's put some pavers in here. What the heck? You know, I'm just going to put a little bit of look of like it's a what you call it, a paved street with pavers. I don't put them all in, you know, I just put a few in, and I juxtaposition each brick in the street. And I make them gray. I'm not going to make them bright. And as I go back, I'm just going to put little dots back here. I can make the color of the street too, because I made the kind of bluish purple, so go with the same color, maybe a little bit darker. And even though sometimes these bricks they've been shined up, they're not wet, but they're shiny because they've been polished so much that they actually reflect. And that happens on a lot of streets too, is where the street is so polished, the cement is so polished, and it's like, you see it like glass, that it looks like it's wet. So you can do that too. Here we're going to start putting in a little bit more of the detail now, and so I'm going to make this a striped awning here. Why not? You know, a lot of times they have striped awnings. And bring it up. Now I added a little bit more than the picture had. I added more depth to it, or thickness to it, so I'm going to have to make that up. So knowing what to make up is kind of knowing how the structure works and stuff like that. So I'll make this a little bit higher up. And then it looks like it starts here, and so this is the building behind it, next to it. So let's kind of just establish this as being like an alley maybe that you go into, back up over here. This lady's hair now, I'm going to put a little hair on her to show the side of her face. Now she's up close, so I got to make it look a little bit more detailed. And then maybe the front of her face, it can be done by doing the background darker and blending the hair right into the background. Like I said, normally I would be in class teaching like the very last half hour, but since I had no class today, I decided just to do a little study here. I always like to paint, and so, you know, why not show you guys? This I'm kind of doing for myself. I wanted to do this scene for a while now. And how detailed I get will all determine how long I want to do it, you know. And then I may get done, and I think I'll leave it laying around for a little bit, and I'll come back to it maybe in a day just to see if I want to finish it more. Let me give it a little bit more detail. Detail into this area. There's a lady's head back here. got, this should be a chair back here, sitting on a chair, so get the legs of the chair. And I think the rest is going to be in this area, and I think we're getting pretty close. We're getting pretty close. I would have reversed the far right figure so she facing into the painting instead of out. This lady would have, yeah, I guess that would have been a good idea, huh? Well, that you do in drawing stage, so it's too late. But good idea. Actually, good idea. Trying to learn. Then again, I don't want this person to be too noticeable either. And so I probably should have maybe either taken her out or, like you said, bring her in and then actually bring her in more too. Like don't leave her standing so close to the edge. When I framed this, if you go in an inch, her face will be right in the edge. So that wasn't a good thing either. So good point, good point. Let's go to the back. Let's get this done, and then we'll be done here. So we got to go in here now and identify what's behind here, what's in the back. Windows, awnings. There's actually pillars right here in the picture. There's like little pillars. I'm making these pillars back here. And then above it, you can do something. And like I said, I still haven't done my thick stuff. I could even still do that if I want. I can go in here and get the thick stuff. And it all depends on if you want to go that far. Do you want to go to a point where you're making it really thick and even cover up some of these areas to make it more opaque and make it more gouache-like? I mean, that's another thing you can do, but you don't have to. You can keep it whatever you want. I will show you how I'm going to use some of the light gouache to make things thick. I enjoy doing that a lot, actually. Let's make this. This is kind of out of perspective. I think I drew this wrong because this building seems this right there and this should be the same angle. Not a good perspective problem here. See, it should be down and like this because this is the top of the awning. This is another awning. There's like two awnings there. Oh, that's down here. There's no awning here, so this I made wrong. Oh well. So we'll just cover this up a little bit here. And I'm going to keep that awning light because it'll look like the sun's hitting right there. I can give it a print, like maybe some yellow lines. And put some dark in that, like it's shadowed a little bit. My buildings back here can have a little bit. I'm going to erase these lines back here. I want my white sky. I don't want to put a blue in there because I just feel that I want the brightness to stay back there. And I know it's burning it out a little bit here, if you can see close up. See how it's just a little bit more, a lot of, I want that to look burnt out, like it's really so bright. You could put like a grayish yellow in there, but nah, I'm just going to keep it white. I could even put blue in there because I do have this blue in here, but I'm just going to keep it white. It's not bad to keep things white on your paper. It is watercolor, and even though I'm using gouache, doesn't mean you have to cover everything with a paint. So let's go into our white gouache here now. I'm going to make things thick. So I'm going to hit things, the top of them, with a gouache white and gray. I can just go in here with some thickness and like the back and the tops of people. Usually the parts that are bright are the top and its shoulders on a person. When you and you can do a little outlining depending on which way the light's hitting. You can just give a little reflected light, little rim lighting. Rim lighting is not a bad thing. You know, here I'm putting rim lighting on this guy, like it's coming right around the corner there, through the little alley. Maybe hitting here and there, and that gives it a look of like, oh, a touch shininess to it. So if you want to look at something shiny, give it touches of white. And this cannot be done if you're doing this in watercolor, pure watercolor, traditional watercolor. Do not do this. This is only if you want to make it part gouache. This is a gouache technique where you go in, and then I'm just using gouache to get back some whites and get my little details in there. The side of this guy's arm is just putting that in there. It is fun. I actually enjoy this part because I feel like this is where I'm getting back into oils. Because it is like, in oils, the best part is the end when you're putting in the thick lights. You know, you like the snow on a pine tree when I do that. And so this is the part I really enjoy, even though it is a watercolor. So I guess I can call it a watercolor because it is opaque watercolor. So I can still call it watercolor, because some people are really, well, you can't call it watercolor, it's mixed media now. No, it's still both watercolor, one just happens to be opaque. So I'm going to put a little bit of thickness in here. A little bit of blue touches in there. Take a little bit of thicker. And you actually make your transparent watercolor kind of like the opaques by just adding white, adding titanium white to your regular watercolor. You can get the same kind of look. And you're not going that thick, so it's okay if you just do a little. I'm putting a couple of little blue touches in there, just as a kind of accent. I love putting in blue accents into things, and purple accents. Now you don't want to get too carried away with this part because it can be kind of fun and almost too much fun. I'm gonna get back to this. And also can help out, like if you missed the lighting of some things, you can bring it back in. Now nothing in the shadow part should be as light as in the light area. So remember that. Like these tables and this lady's shirt are almost too light, but it brings in a little bit. These could be reflective tables, and so it could reflect in like it's a mirror. It can reflect what's above it. So you can do that. That's one thing you can do. And maybe because she is right in front, it just looks a little bit lighter. That's fine. Again, sorry I don't have the colors of my gouache, but again, use colors that you like. There's many colors. There's 24 colors in there, and I had 4 boxes. I had the 4 different season boxes. They come by season. Like there's a fall, spring, winter, and autumn box, and so choose the colors that you like. Buy them separately, even, and that way you get exactly the colors you want. There you get just those colors that are in the box or in the which is fine. I just chose the ones out of the box, which I liked more than the other ones. And see, this awning here looks kind of weird, so I'm just gonna make that. There's an awning in the back in this little area here. I think we're almost done, guys. I can't think of seeing too much more. If you guys see something, let me know. Agnes asked if the gouache white works better than the pro white. They're pretty much the same. Pro white is nice. It covers up just like the gouache. Gouache white is very opaque, and so you'll get a very opaque color. And like the pro white, which is what key liners used to use, and it works great. So either one works good. All right, that's it. I'm going to take the tape off and show you what we did on this morning. Take one glove off here so I can get the tape. So if you know anybody that's a beginner that wants to start learning how to do watercolor from the get-go, now's the time to join me every Thursday night and get my newsletter at my website, BeckerArt.net, or David R. Becker. Don't forget the R, DavidRBecker.com. And you can get my newsletter every Tuesday, and it shows you what we're repainting, and it gives you ideas of, I give you little hints and stuff of how to work watercolor and all kinds of different things in there. But that's all on my website at BeckerArt.net. And so I think that is it, guys. Any more questions? Yes, that's how we'll do our key liner. Yep, key liners used to be the people that make the ads, and they used to use Pro White to block out little things and stuff. But there you have it, guys. A little scene from Nice, and I think that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any other questions besides what you have had through here, I'll go through this. Just ask away in the comment section, and I will go back in and I'll answer them. All right. So have a great New Year, and I hope you have a great evening tonight. And we will see you next week, next Thursday. All right. Until then, we'll see you later. I gotta go heat up my coffee again. See you later. Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year.